Let's bring in our panel. We have MS Now senior Capitol Hill reporter Ali Vitali, senior White House reporter Vaughn Hilliard, attorney Eric Fadali, whose firm represented nearly a dozen Epstein survivors, and former federal prosecutor Barrett Berger. It is great to have all of you guys with me this morning. Ali, I'm going to start with you because I am hearing that you just ran into Leader Thune. And I want to hear what he has told you, and if you know of any plans to hold a vote on this before the August recess in just a couple days.
I think that's really one of the open questions here, because my question to Leader Thune was if he's spoken to Tillis or Cornyn and what he makes of the fact that they are willing to hold up this nominating process unless they get the things and assurances that they need from DOJ around this settlement agreement, both the 1776 fund, but then also the IRS immunity deal that the president made as part of it. And Thune basically sounded notes of confidence when we spoke with him briefly as he got into an elevator here. He said that ultimately he thinks that this is going to work out and that Blanche will be confirmed. We also asked about the president, and there were a few questions being tossed around at once. You can see I'm right in the front of a very large scrum of reporters, and so a lot of noise was being made. But when we asked about broadly the president and vote counting, whether it was on any number of things, Blanche or budget resolutions or whatever else, Thune said something to the effect of, well, he doesn't vote here. And I think that for someone like John Thune, who has found himself in the crosshairs of President Trump and being crosswise with what Trump wants versus what he can actually do here in the Senate with the slim majority that he has, for someone like Thune, who is so even keel, rarely lets any frustration or anger flash in public view. We have seen more of these seemingly feisty comments, especially if I'm grading on the Thune curve of how we usually hear him talk. And so I think it's notable to hear him say that. If we pivot back to Todd Blanche and his fate, I think the timing is up in the air, but it's notable when Cornyn told me this morning he is prepared to vote no. He says that all of this is because DOJ doesn't want to put on paper that the fund is dead or that the IRS immunity deal is dead. But he also responded when I asked him if this is about something personal with the president, because the president is saying that it's because Cornyn is mad at him. And this is what the senator told me.
That has nothing to do with it. This is about making sure that that even if you're the president of the United States, you don't get favorable terms from the government in a settlement of a lawsuit that ordinary citizens would not get.
So there's his reasoning, pushing back on any of it being personal, but we don't know where this story is going to go. And I think there's active counter-proposals, Antonia, being traded behind the scenes right now.
Vaughn, I want your reaction to Ali's reporting there, her conversation. Do you believe Cornyn when he's saying, this isn't personal, this is about, the principle of the settlement agreement here? Or do you think there is an element that is, in fact, personal because Trump did burn him?
We haven't seen him act this independently in his time while working with Donald Trump in this White House. And I think that we have had so many conversations over the last year and a half about who in Washington, D.C. was going to stand up effectively to Donald Trump's power grab. They essentially tried to create a $1.7 billion slush fund to hand out to their allies, including individuals who were charged and some were even convicted of criminal offenses. And that is the type of, many call it corruption, that we're talking about. And to grant legal immunity to the president and his family from tax audits. What are we saying here? We're seeing somebody stand up to Donald Trump. We're seeing John Cornyn and Thom Tillis stand up to Donald Trump. Democrats are in the minority here. And it is I think a moment of reckoning for this White House because, you could call them a lame duck come 2027 and 2028 if the Democrats were to even take control of just the House. But suddenly here in the middle of the summer of 2026, there's not the Democrats in control that are holding up his efforts, but now it's effective Republican lawmakers that have been staunchly defenders of his up until this point, still 6 months before he were to even lose potential majorities in the Senate and the House.
Do you get the sense, at least from people around him, around the White House, that Trump has any regrets about the way that he's treated these two Republican senators who now don't seem to feel too compelled to have his back and Blanche's back in this moment.
Donald Trump doesn't seem to have many regrets, generally. He doesn't apologize. He doesn't express regret. If Ken Paxton were to win in November, he would double down and say, well, he has a true ally in the U.S. Senate, that clearly he doesn't believe that John Cornyn in July of 2026 is. And I think that for Donald Trump, he has focused so much over the last 5 years, since January 6th, at consolidating power in the Republican Party. And that works if you're trying to win power in your party. But if you're trying to effectively govern, your party can only take you so far. And, you know, you can go and oust folks from House that voted to impeach you. But ultimately, this effort is a little too early, because now it's those folks that are still in office that are effectively holding up his agenda.
Eric, I want your take on the extent to which this is also about the treatment of the survivors who have spoken so forcefully, so clearly, directly to the American people, when people like Blanche or previously Bondi were not giving them really the time of day. And I want to just replay the sound. Our viewers got to hear it live on our air yesterday, what Danny Bensky said about the dynamic here. This was steps from Cornyn's office. Take a listen.
We just hope that they do the right thing. And I think at this point, we're not political, and we never have been. And it would be great to have some Republican support, especially from somebody like Senator Cornyn's office, who has been so wonderful on sex trafficking. So we just hope that he will see what this is and make sure he does the right thing.
Do you think they're listening to your clients?
I think so, because what's been so, I don't want to say shocking, because nothing's shocking from this administration, but I think what's been so disheartening is this administration and this Department of Justice inability to even pretend to care about the Epstein victims. I mean, you heard Danielle Bensky say that, you know, he was telling her to hurry up or get to the point. Remember Pam Bondi, when she was on the House floor, couldn't even look at them in the eye when she was having her little temper tantrum during her hearing. I mean, not only do they not care about the Epstein victims, they can't even pretend. They can't even make it look like they care to the American people or to the other people on this committee so that maybe they can get the vote. Todd Blanche was basically dragged in to that meeting with the Epstein survivors. And then once he was in there behind closed doors, he could have just been friendly to them. He could have pretended and said, listen, I hear you. I understand you. I want to do what's right here. But apparently everything I'm hearing from that hearing, he did not. So it's just so remarkable that this administration has made this nonpartisan issue so partisan to the point that Todd Blanche may not become Attorney General. And I also think it's important to recognize the survivors here. They have been wronged every step of the way, from law enforcement, FBI, local authorities, this administration, Department of Justice. Wronged, and they continue to fight. They do not give up. They are relentless. They continue to make real impact. It may be because of them or because of their efforts that Todd Blanche does not get confirmed as Attorney General, because of the way he and the Department of Justice completely just mishandled, and that's honestly an understatement, the release of the Epstein files and how they've treated the Epstein survivors generally.
Barrett, what do you think is most likely to happen now? Do you think that he's basically just going to stay in this interim position for an indefinite period of time? Is there a possibility here that he could basically just stay in the role through the rest of Trump's term?
Yeah, I mean, Todd Blanche will continue to be the Attorney General, whether it's in an acting capacity or an interim capacity. I think it's extremely unlikely that anyone else would have this job. Whether he actually gets it as a confirmed Attorney General is sort of the big question. All of this really just, to me, demonstrates how far the Department of Justice has come from where it traditionally has been. You heard in your opening some of the senators saying, you know, this refusal to put this in writing about the willingness to, not go forward with the fund or the audit immunity. They said it's not necessarily coming from Blanche, but coming from somebody higher up. That in and of itself shows how much the department's independence has just been compromised, both in this administration and, quite frankly, with Blanche at the helm here. This, never would have been the case that a settlement could not be, that the Attorney General themselves wouldn't have the authority to put something like this in writing. And the fact that somebody else is pulling the strings here and not Blanche is very telling, and, shows, I think, what will be driving his tenure as Attorney General, whether it's acting or if he ultimately is confirmed.
Eric, do you think the survivors are worried right now? Are you personally worried right now that the White House will take a look at what's happening with Cornyn and with Tillis? There will be some behind the scenes conversations, something worked out here, and then they're just going to be right back in the fold voting to confirm Blanche in a matter of days or weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a concern of mine. It's a concern of my survivor clients, and I believe it's a concern of all of the survivors. Again, this Department of Justice has basically worked against the survivors of this, of Jeffrey Epstein. It's almost like they are in competition with the survivors as opposed to being the Department of Justice, as opposed to be working for them. It seems like they're working against them. One of my clients was named 538 times during the last release of documents. 538 times, and I want to give the Department of Justice the benefit of the doubt and say maybe it's a mistake. But when you compare that to the fact that there were no mistakes in the way they meticulously redacted many of the alleged perpetrators, redacted many documents that had, very salacious information, I don't think it's been anything short of a cover-up from this Department of Justice, perhaps coming down from this administration. And that really concerns the survivors. What I can tell you, though, is, as I said before, they're not going to give up. Even if Todd Blanche remains as acting attorney general, if he's appointed attorney general, or if Trump replaces him with another stooge to do his bidding in the Department of Justice, I can guarantee myself and these survivors are not going to give up until justice, accountability, and closure is finally achieved for these survivors.